Hello friends, this is the 8th lesson, and 8th lesson is divided into two parts. So this is part 1. In part 1 we are going to cover the following topics: how to handle missing values, aggregation functions, and we will be talking about plotting the data. Now let's see what is missing value or what is null value here and how to handle these values. If you are not handling these values, what will be the problem? So missing values, or they are called null values, or in pandas they are also called as non values or not a number. So these are the values which will be there in a data set, and identifying these values, removing them or replacing them by some values, this is the task of a data scientist. It is important. So if you are not removing or replacing these values, so while doing calculations, applying some mathematics or statistics, so there it will return something called undefined value. So it is important to first identify the missing values and replace them or drop them from the data set. Then the data will be cleaned and we can apply mathematics and also statistics, and the result also will be accurate. So pandas use a special value called none or not a number to represent missing values. In Python, this none is a special floating point value returned by certain operations. One of their results ends with undefined value. If you are not handling them, so it will return this value, undefined value. They are called undefined values. So first thing, the operation what we can perform here, listing the null values. How to list or how to see how many null values are there, or whether we have null values in the data set or whole data set or a column. So for that we are using is null function. Dropping them, it means removing the null values from the data set or from a column. So for that we are using this function, drop null values. Or we may replace them with some other values, like with 0 or a number or some other calculated value. So in that time we have to use the function fill null values. So these three functions are so much important and we are using them. And then we have, let's say, aggregation functions. Aggregation functions we have used a lot, but we didn't discuss a lot about these functions. Here I am going to talk about these functions. These functions are used to group values of multiple rows or columns and form a single summary value. And the result of these functions applied to a row or a column is always a number. So in a data set, if you want to find the summary of a column, for example, I want to find the sum of all values in a specific column, or I want the maximum, or I want the minimum, the mean, the standard deviation or something. So these functions are called aggregation functions. So aggregation functions are used to group the values of multiple rows or columns and form a single summary value. Meanwhile, if a function is applied to a data frame or a selection row or column, then you can specify. What we can specify? We can specify whether it is row wise or column wise we are going to apply. If the function is applied to rows for each column, then this attribute should be assigned the value 0. If the function should be applied to the columns for each rows, so the axis, this attribute is assigned the value 1. Okay, then we have plotting the data. Plotting data I am going to discuss in second part of this tutorial. Now let's see here how to read the data and apply some functions here. Okay, so for reading the data I am importing this library, pandas library, Python library for reading tabular form data. So it is imported here, and the object is created PD, and through this object I am reading comma separate value, and the data set I am using here is the Titanic data set, and I have specified the columns here. I don't want all the columns but only 5 columns from that data set. Let me run this seal and see the result. Yeah, here the 5 columns we have survived. So this Titanic is a story, or it is an evidence which happened before in 1912. So it was a ship which was drawn in water. So it is the story or the data set of that story, we can say. There are so many columns, but I have specified only 5 columns. If I remove the spot, see how many columns we have. Yeah, 12 columns we have. And how many rows are there? About 891 rows are there. How many rows? This much rows and 12 columns. But I say no, I don't want all the columns. I don't want like cabin, embark, fare, those things. I want only 5 columns, and 5 columns are the number of survived, whether the passenger was survived or dead. Okay, passenger class, these are classes, class 1, class 2 and class 3 classes we had. And survived, for survived we have 1, and for dead we have 0. And we have the name of passenger, and we have the sex, male or female, and the age of passengers. So if I specify the columns, so it will decrease to only 5 columns. And now let's see, here also it is showing us 891 rows and 5 columns we have. And if we call this attribute here ship, and through this also you can specify the number of columns and the number of observations here. Now let's see the missing values, whether in this data set we have missing values or not. Yeah, see here it is showing us one missing value. Some missing values are here in this data set, and now how to list these missing values. The first thing, select the rows that have at least one missing value, So for that you have to write like this: Titanic data set, data frame, and in that we are using the function is null any, and specify the access here 1, and we say you list only first 5 records. So in first 5 records we see here, and first column we don't have null values, and second column we don't have missing values, and third column also we don't have, and fourth column also we don't have missing values, but in last column, which is age, we have some missing values. So these missing values are called null values or undefined values, or we can say not a number. These are defined by data frame pandas. Here in this statement I have used the whole data set, but you can specify the number of columns, which column you want to check whether it has null or not. Here filter all the rows where the name value is missing, whether we have any missing value here in name or not, and let's see whether is there any missing value or not. So it returns nothing because we don't have any missing value in this column. But if I put instead of name here age and run it again, and this time it is returning according to this head function 5 records, and the last one, if you are observing here, so many nulls we have. Let's count the number of nulls in each column. How many nulls are there in first column, in second column, and third column? I say you go to Titanic dataset, and then you check whether we have null or not, and you count or sum the number of nulls there. So by that, if you run, you are seeing here survived column has 0 nulls, P class has 0 nulls, but the last one H has 177 null values, the last one, the H column. And also here you can specify, instead of the whole data set, you can take a specific column, like we say only age. In age you check whether we have null values or not. Yeah, obviously we have 177 null values in each column, as it was shown here in previous one, see. And now let's see the dimensions here. Yeah, it is how many rows and how many columns we have, it is specified. Now let's go to the second part, which is dropping the null values. While dropping the null values, friends, you have to be very careful. Dropping the values means we are losing the data. It is not simply if you say drop the null values, okay, we will drop the null values, but in fact you lost the data. This is the first way you can do that. The first way you can do, you can call it like drop in A, and I am storing it in a new data frame. Okay, by running this, it will remove all the null values from the data set. Let me run the second statement, and this time it says, yeah, we don't have any missing values in any column. The result is 0. But let me run this shift. Yeah, here you see the number of records are decreased. How many? Here we have 891, but here it is decreased to 714. So many data we lost. This is not the proper way to drop all the null values. Instead of dropping all the null values, you can specify also the columns, like in columns you want to remove, or in rows you want to remove the null values by specifying the attribute axis here. As here said before, axis equal to 0 the rows for each column, and axis equal to 1 the columns for each row. For example, let me find, for example, here I want to find the maximum. Okay, you find the maximum and axis is equal to 1. If I say axis is equal to 1, what it is doing, it is finding the columns for each row, and it returns the the maximum value for each column. In column 0 we have maximum value 22. Let me see whether it is 22 or not. Yeah, it is 22, friends. Yeah, column 1 0 index, what is the maximum value here? The maximum value is 22, this one, the last one, and so on. It finds the maximum values for each column, because we said axis is equal to 0, and if axis is equal to 0 the columns for each row. But and see the second column also I will show you. In second column we have 38, the maximum value, whether it is 0 or not. Yeah, 38, second column, second row. Now instead of axis is equal to 1, if I put 0 here, what will happen? Here the rows for each column it finds. Yeah, and first survive column we have maximum 1, because we had only two values here. If you remember, we have 0 1 0 1 0 1. So what is the maximum? The maximum is 1. In P class, what is the maximum? 3, because 3 2 1. How many passenger classes are there? 3. Class third, class second, class 1. So the maximum is 3 here. And what is the maximum value in each column? And it is 80. Now filling the null values. Instead of dropping the null values, it is better to fill the null value. But let me run it here. We didn't run the first. Okay, here I said you drop all the null values based on rows. So how many records are removed? 177 records are removed, and only we have this much rows, because based on rows we said axis is equal to 0, that much rows which had null values removed. If I put this one 1, see the whole column is removed. The whole column is removed. Now instead of removing the columns or dropping the columns, it is better to fill or replace the values, the null values, with some other proper values or quantities, we can say. Okay, but for that we are using the function fill in a null values. The first thing, I want to fill all null values with 0. All null values of the data set Titanic, you fill it with 0. and then I want to display whether there is any null value or not. Let me see whether we have any null value there. No, because they are all replaced with 0. It returns false. First column we have false, it means we don't have any missing values. Second, we don't have any missing values. All missing values are replaced with 0. So this is one way we can replace it or fill it with 0. Now you go and check this column, it is replaced with 0. We put 0, but instead of 0 you can say no, I don't want 0, I want like the value 5. Okay, this time it is replaced with 5. Yeah, let me execute this part also. Yeah, let's see whether it is replaced. Yeah, it is 5 here. But instead of using like this numbers, it is better to replace it with some other calculated value. Like here I want to find the mean value of the each column, and then all the null values I want to replace with that or fill it with the mean value. The mean means the average. First you find all the sum and then find the average, and then you replace or fill all the null values with the mean of that. So this is a better way. Instead of putting 0 or some like other random numbers, it is better to use like this. It is mathematically something right. We are finding the average and replacing all those null values with the mean value. So it returns false for each column. It says there is no missing value. Let me see the result. Okay, this time it is replaced with the average value. So first it calculated all these values, it found the sum and then the average, and the null value is replaced with that average value. We have some other method for that also, for replacing or refilling the null values. Here fill it means null values with previous value or with next value. For example, this is the null value, this was the null value, I want to replace it with this, which is previous one, or with next value with this one. This is also possible. It is also a way for replacing the null values, and for that we have F fill and we have B fill. F fill means forward fill and B fill means backward fill. Now I want to forward fill and let's see the result. Yeah, so here it is 19 and it is taken that value, the previous value, and replaced by that. But if I use this one, this time it is taking the next value and replace it by that. So next value was 26 and that is also 26. This is also one way you can replace it, by using the method and here F fill or B fill function attributes. Okay, another way is also there for replacing or removing or replacing the null values by using the function replace. So here I say numpy, I am using numpy library. From numpy I say whenever you found anywhere null value, you replace that null value with minus 99, and let's see what it returns. Yeah, it is replaced by minus 99. Or you can say if there is any null value in each column, you replace it with no value, and in place true, it means you apply these changes to the original data set. Yeah, you see here it is replaced with no value in each column, no value, it says, and the changes happen to the original data set. So we talked about aggregation functions, and we said aggregation functions are the functions which can be applied on a column and it returns a single summary value. Like we have count, sum, mean, median. These are the functions we can apply on a column I mean quantitative, it should be quantitative values, not qualitative values. So you can find the count, sum, minimum, like that. These are called the aggregation functions, some of the aggregation functions. Now let me run this in functions. It lists all the values, so we can apply them on this column or p class or age. We cannot apply them on like sex or name because they are qualitative values. If I apply and I don't specify the column name, it is taking only these 3 columns. I say you count the number of records, so it counts the number of records for all the values. We said if it is qualitative also we can count the frequency, how many times it is repeated, but you cannot find the minimum, maximum, because we cannot do those things here, calculations. Okay, here I want to see aggregation function sum. I want to use and see whether we have missing values and how many missing values in each column we have, and for that I'm using that. It says we have no missing values. Yeah, if you want to find the mean, okay, it finds the mean for us, mean for that, and mean for this one. Why I didn't find the mean for the last column, friends, for this one? Because this is also number. Why I didn't find the mean for this? Because we replace some null values with, it has null values, and null value is replaced with no value. Instead, if you run and say no, you replace it with 0, let me replace it with 0 like this. Yeah, this time the null value is replaced with 0. Sorry, where was that? Yeah, let it be 5, replaced with 5. Yeah, it is replaced with 5, replaced with 5. Oh sorry, why it's not replacing it? Let me import again the values because the original data set is changed. I want again the data, now it is NA. I want to replace it with 5. What was the value of 5 here? Was that? Yeah, it is here. You replace it with 5. Yeah, let's see whether it is replaced or not. Yeah, it is replaced. And now let's see here if I find them. This one. Yeah, see, it is replaced. It is giving me that also, because these mean, maximum, sum, they are applied on quantitative values and the result will be returned. Now here again I group, first I group by survived column, and then I go for P class and find the minimum of that. You see, survived, and we have 0 for dead and 1 for alive, and these are the average, or we can say the mean of the values. We can go to 6th column and again we can take the age, or you can take like the P class and find the minimum, maximum, mean, like that you can find. And let's see the last one here. We have aggregation function, means simultaneously we can apply 2 or more than 2 aggregation functions here on a column like age. So let me apply at the same time minimum, mean, and maximum and see the result. This is the minimum for age, this is the minimum value, and this is the the mean, and this is the maximum value. But one thing else you have to remember, friends, you can use like this also without quotations, like maximum, minimum without quotations, because they are predefined functions you can use, and you can say aggregate, you combine the age. Here I have used the dictionary. You go to age, and on age you apply these 3 functions: maximum, mean, and what? Maximum, minimum, and mean of that. And the second key is P class, and the value for that you calculate the unique values, how many unique values we have there. And for that, see, maximum, mean, and minimum of that is found for age, but for P class it has found the unique values. How many unique values we have there? 3. Third class is, we had only 3 classes, class 1, class 2 and class 3. We have 3 unique values. So I have used dictionary here for applying the aggregation functions manually on each column. And the last one here, we used count, value underscore counts, and count the number of records for each different value in a vector. If you want to do that, let's see. Yeah, so this one is the P class. In P class I have used, yeah, in third column how many values we have, in first class how many values we have, and in second class how many values we have. So these are 3 classes we had. If you remember passenger classes, class 1, here it is shown how many Unix values, yeah, 3, and how many values for each we have. These are the number of passengers in each class. I hope you understood this much. So we covered the topics and we use a Titanic data set, and these were the topics we talked about, and we are going to continue plotting in the second part of this tutorial. Hope you understood this much.